This is the Bleav in Pro Wrestling podcast. Here's Rick Ucchino and SP3 on the Bleav Podcast Network.
Well, let's dive into this, shall we? Welcome in Tuesday morning. It's the Bleav in Pro Wrestling podcast, and wow. If you guys did not watch Raw or pay attention to social media, if you've been living under a rock for the last, 12 hours or so, we got some stuff to catch y'all up on. There were some things that happened on Raw last night. I couldn't tell you what most of them were. About 45 minutes or so into Raw, all of a sudden we get one of those reports that's like, wait, what? And then it just kept snowballing from there. But the baseline is Sasha Banks and Naomi walked out on WWE RAW last night. I will say that and not say WWE because we just don't know how far that this is gone and how far it's going to go. There are a lot of factors in this, and SP3, format be damned. We've never done this before, but we're pretty much going to focus on one topic and one topic only. Like I said, there were some things that happened on Raw last night, but from about 9 o'clock on, outside of the Cody meter or the countdown to Cody or whatever the hell they were calling it, his promo, Kevin Owens on commentary, and the main event, I don't know what the hell happened because I'm focusing on this report between Sasha Banks and Naomi, and it's coming from PW Insider and Fightful, and WrestleVotes is putting out some reports on this, and we'll catch you up on everything that we know right now. This recording is going down at 11:15 p.m. on Monday night. I'm sure more will come out afterwards, but man, the more and more I read on this SP3, the more and more questions I have.
I was so confused with the decision making on the show with, they did something different where they started off the show not at the commentary desk with the commentary team. They were in front of the steel cage because steel cage match between Bobby Lashley and Omos kicked off the show, and they did their rundown, and everybody was talking about the Cody clock, but a lot of people were excited about a six-pack challenge that was announced for the main event of Becky Lynch, Asuka, Sasha Banks, Naomi, Nikki A.S.H, and Doudrop.
Yes.
And then about 50 minutes into the show, there's a very haphazardly thrown together segment with Becky Lynch and Adam Pearce, where Becky says that Sasha and Naomi walked out and she thinks that she should just be named no more contender. And then Adam Pearce scraps the six-pack challenge and says it's going to be Becky Lynch and Asuka on the night. And I was just confused on why they promoted the six-pack challenge and then switched it not even halfway through the show, like a quarter into the show. And like you said, it just kept snowballing and more information came out, and every single report that came out after that just feel like a bigger mind. I don't curse enough on the show. Mind fuck after mind fuck that we proceeded to get.
Yeah, and this is by far going to be just the tip of the iceberg. First things first, before we dive any deeper into this, got to thank our partners over at BetOnline. Continue number one source for all your betting needs and sports information. Get the latest odds, news, developments on the NBA playoffs, Major League Baseball fights, NFL futures, and more. Their continued number one source, BetOnline, is for all your wagering needs, including live betting and fan favorite Vegas casino and poker games. Real simple to get started. Head on over to the website, use your mobile device, sign up, use our promo code Bleav, BLEAV, receive 50% on your welcome bonus for your first deposit. Bet online where the game starts. And yeah, so tip of the iceberg here as Sasha Banks and Naomi walk out on Raw last night. And it was about that 8:45 mark, right before 9 o'clock rolls around, that we start getting reports out. PW Insider was the first, Fightful later confirmed that this wasn't a shoot. When Becky, out of breath, came running over to Adam Pearce and said, I don't know, I saw them get in a car and leave, that was actually the case. Sasha Banks and Naomi left when they were scheduled to be a part of that 6-pack challenge. And all of a sudden it goes from, oh, this is an actual, this isn't a work. This is a shoot. All right. Like, this is actually going down. And there are people who are still going to believe that it's a work as of this morning, but apparently that is further from the case. And I guess my first question, all right, let's just start at the beginning and work our way through this. My first question in all of this is, why the hell were Sasha and Naomi even booked for this match in the first place? You have a Raw women's roster that is stacked 13 deep. Take Bianca out of the equation, you have 12 superstars you could have picked through to get a 6-pack challenge together. Maybe you're trying to put together the biggest star-studded match that you can, so you add in Sasha Banks and Naomi. All right, I guess I can kind of understand that. But then you start getting into the booking angles of things where it's like, okay, well then, are we really going to bring in our women's tag team champions and have one or both of them lose? Because presumably you would expect either Becky Lynch or Asuka, because that's what they have been setting up on Monday Night Raw, to win this match or to have a tie and set up the triple threat match, which is what we thought they were heading towards last week. But then Fightful puts out the report that it was actually Naomi that was booked to win this match. As little sense as that makes. One half of your women's tag team champions, who is a SmackDown superstar, who has a thin roster over on SmackDown. We talked about this on the live show yesterday. Ronda Rousey doesn't have a rival to go against right now, and you're going to pluck Naomi, move her over to Raw, again, where you are 13 deep, and have her be the challenger for Bianca Belair and circumvent everything you've been building up with Asuka and Becky Lynch over the last few weeks? That doesn't make any sense. And then you read into the report first from Fightful Select here. It was PW Insider who reported that they walked out. But then the Fightful Select report comes out that says, those that we have heard from in tonight's Raw taping, Sasha Banks was not satisfied with creative associated with her plans for the evening. As Fightful Select reported, Sasha was involved in the 6-pack challenge with Naomi, Asuka, Doudrop, and Nikki A.S.H. During the Raw broadcast, it was announced and then changed to Asuka and Becky Lynch, and they said that Sasha Banks and Naomi had left the building. We were told that Sasha Banks had a meeting with Vince McMahon, voiced her displeasure about the situation, and would not budge on her stance. Vince McMahon also was said to be unwilling to budge. So, again, taking this at a piece at a time, if it comes down to just a creative standpoint, I can kind of understand the frustrations here. And Naomi kind of leaving with, many people started asking, why would Naomi walk out if she was booked to win the match? Because it don't make no damn sense for Naomi to win this damn match. If that's the creative process, if that's the creative booking, that they're just going to throw away what they had done with Becky and Asuka so far and then just pluck Naomi over there. Okay, if that was just it, if it was just creative on the part of Sasha and Naomi and them going, hey, we don't understand this and we're not comfortable doing this, totally understand that. Completely understand that. Because again, step one here, none of these plans made any sense whatsoever.
No, it didn't make any sense, but this is this company. This is WWE for you, where we talked about it on the live show yesterday, that this company has really is putting it in everyone's mind, the fans, people within the company, that Hell in a Cell is not that important. Hell in a Cell is a burden that they have to get through before they get to the more important shows of Money in the Bank in Alliance Stadium in Las Vegas, the stadium show in Nissan at Nashville for SummerSlam, and then Cardiff, Wales for Clash at the Castle. That's the 3 important shows that are coming up for WWE, and Hell in a Cell is more of a burden for them that they have to get through. So they don't want to do one of their major matches of either Asuka and Becky at Hell in a Cell, or Asuka, Becky, and Bianca in a 3-way. They didn't want to do those 2 options for this pay-per-view. They rather save that for one of the stadium shows. So what they were thinking, what I can make sense of this report, is Naomi was just a filler. She was supposed to be a filler challenger
Yep.
to give Bianca a win
Yep.
to get through Hell in a Cell so they can get to the more important shows. So it doesn't make too much sense, but at this point, when we heard this first report, when we heard the first report of PW Insider saying Sasha and Naomi walked out, and I was like kind of on their side, where I'm just like, no, it doesn't make sense. If you don't agree with it, then yeah, okay, maybe you just leave. It does look unprofessional on your part a little bit there, but if you believe in something, you have to kind of stand by that. I was on Stone Cold Steve Austin's side when he walked out, because he thought that it didn't make any sense to blow off a money matchup like him and Brock Lesnar in a King of the Ring qualifying match back in 2002. Then, as more information came out, you kind of see the WWE perspective. When the news came out from Fightful with their first report, and they, put out the report, and Sasha and Vince having, different opinions and not wanting to budge, that all makes sense to me. That makes sense that Vince McMahon is stubborn, and he's 70 something years old, and he doesn't care what you think. If it doesn't make sense to you, it makes sense to him. He's going to stand by what he believes in. And Sasha Banks, and this is the main thing. Like, there was people that initially, when the report came out, they're like, "Oh, Sasha's upset because she's gonna lose and stuff." Sasha Banks does not care if she wins or loses. She just wants it to make sense, and if it
Yes.
doesn't make sense to her, then she's gonna stand by what she believes in. It was the part of Naomi was supposed to win this that just made it very baffling that
Yeah.
she also chose to walk out with Sasha Banks, because Naomi seems like the type of performer that kind of is a company person. Like, even though some stuff doesn't make sense, she'll kind of just do it. So she had to feel like this was at the point that it doesn't make sense, and I had to kind of take a step back, where yes, I can understand where WWE is coming from. They don't really care about Hell in a Cell. They're just trying to throw in a filler challenger, and Bianca Belair versus Naomi would be a great matchup
Yep.
in their eyes. Perfect solution for not wanting to do Becky and Asuka. But I can also see it from Sasha and Naomi's part, where they're the WWE Women's Tag Team Champions. They want to be respected as a tag team. They are trying to elevate these titles. You have Naomi appearing on Hot 97 and doing media there. You have Sasha Banks doing the whole visit to the school in Brooklyn for the wrestling club with Walter Perry. You got her doing the first pitch at Fenway. Like, you're doing all of this. She just did Cold as Balls with Kevin Hart. They're doing
Yep.
all this promoting, not only putting their names out there, but trying to elevate these women's tag team titles. They want to be viewed as a pair. They're gelling, they're putting in that chemistry together, and they're trying to make these titles important. And then you kind of just throw a wrench into the plan, where that's not where they saw they were going. That's not probably what WWE said they were going to do. They just decided, hey, we need a filler. Naomi's the best option in our opinion, because we've done Bianca versus Drop to Death. We've done Bianca and Nikki A.S.H. and we've basically made Nikki A.S.H. never believable as a title challenger based on her first title reign and everything we've done with her since then. We don't want to do Becky or Asuka, because we want their feud to still continue, and we want to come back to this triple threat probably at one of the stadium shows. So why not we just put Naomi in there? We already did Sasha and Bianca enough, and we want to save that for maybe a big show. Let's do Bianca and Naomi here. So I kind of saw it from both sides after this first report. It's when WWE basically put their 2 cents into this, not just with their statement, but with their commentary, with Corey Graves saying that Sasha Banks and Naomi, first he said it like in passing, that they walked out. Then when they promoted the Asuka and Becky Lynch matchup, he said Sasha Banks and Naomi summarily and unprofessionally walked out. That's when I was like, oh no, this is WWE trying to control the narrative here. And I had it inkling, I had a feeling. I was like, they're gonna release a statement about this. I kind of
And
knew
they
it.
never do that.
They never do
Do
it,
this.
but when they are trying to control a narrative, this felt very much like the situation that I just brought up with Stone Cold Steve Austin walking out, where they had to make the whole WWE Confidential documentary about Stone Cold walking out, and they had to put their spin on it. They had JR, who didn't want to say that Stone Cold took his ball and went home, but Vince made him say that. You had Vince McMahon come out and cut the whole promo about how Stone Cold took his ball and went home. You had The Rock come back from filming a movie, come back early to say that Stone Cold took his ball and went home. They're not going to go that far on this situation, but they made sure Corey Graves said that they unprofessionally walked out, and now we're in with the WWE. I had a feeling a statement would be released, but you can continue on with this whole story.
Yeah. So they did release a statement, and it is a doozy. It reads in full: when Sasha Banks and Naomi arrived at the arena this afternoon, they were informed of their participation in the main event of tonight's Monday Night Raw. During the broadcast, they walked into WWE Talent Relations John Laurinaitis' office with their suitcases in hand and placed their tag team championship belts on his desk and walked out. This is during the broadcast. So, right there, this explains why they promoted the six-pack challenge at the top of the hour and then proceeded to change it with some hastily put together stuff. Continuing on with the statement, they claimed they were not respected enough as tag team champions, as SP3 alluded to earlier. And even though they had 8 hours to rehearse and construct their match, they claimed they were uncomfortable in the ring with two of their opponents, even though they had matches with those individuals in the past with no consequence. Monday Night Raw is a scripted live TV show whose characters are expected to perform the requirements of their contract. We regret we were unable to deliver as advertised tonight's main event. End of statement. And there's a lot to unpack there, right there.
Before you continue, we have more breaking news.
Oh,
Because I work with different outlets, so I have up my group chat with Wrestle Talk because they're doing news writing. And the latest bit of news, the latest story is this is not just a 1 day situation. Apparently, Sasha Banks unfollowed WWE and Vince McMahon on Twitter over the weekend. Apparently she didn't just unfollow WWE and Vince McMahon, she unfollowed like everyone except for like 6 different accounts. So this might have been a culmination today of like a whole weekend thing. Maybe they got informed of the plans for Monday over the weekend, and just today is when it kind of popped off from that bit of news that just broke right now from
and,
what
and
going
that kind
along
of
with everything else we've heard.
And that kind of ties in with this WrestleVotes tweet that came out a little bit ago. Source notes that WWE statement regarding Sasha Banks and Naomi walkout is just the baseline of the details. Shocker there. The tension leading up to the walkout was palpable all day, with both superstars upset at something that had transpired. More details will come out in due time on this. And again, yeah, this entire episode could be burnt by 10 a.m. today. With new information that continues to pour out on this. But obviously something went down that irked Sasha Banks and Naomi. I think it's very telling in this line right here. Dropped their tag team championship belts on the desk and walked out. Claimed they were not respected enough as the tag team champions, which makes me wonder if Naomi winning wasn't just a filler situation. If maybe Naomi winning was supposed to be the catalyst of turning Naomi heel and splitting up this tag team with Sasha Banks and Naomi already, which we have seen them do ad nauseum with the women's tag team division. Champions win the belts, they lose them, they split. They've done that 5 times in a row now. And as we've talked about ad nauseum, the women's tag team championship division is only 2 or 3 deep. Don't even know for sure, to be completely honest with you. So they had already beaten everybody in the tag team division. And instead of working on making new teams and even the newest team of Doudrop and Nikki A.S.H, they had already beat them the week prior. So maybe it was something to do with the women's tag team division. We know this is something that is near and dear to Sasha Banks' heart. It was her and Bayley that really pushed for these titles to be created in the first place, and they won the belts for the first time out. And then, like a month later, they dropped the damn things, right? So maybe that has something to do with it. Maybe future plans, all of that tied into this is reckless speculation on our part. We're, again, trying to make sense of things. But then it's this other line here that WWE says they claim they weren't respected enough as tag team champions. And even though they had 8 hours to rehearse and to construct their match, they claim that were uncomfortable in the ring with 2 of their opponents. So of the 4 opponents last night, we're talking about Becky and Asuka, Doudrop and Nikki A.S.H. And that's the line to me that makes the least amount of sense, because I don't know if that necessarily means like wrestling them. Like because none of these 4 ladies have a reputation of being reckless or difficult to work with inside of the wrestling ring. We know Becky and Sasha make magic together. We have seen Asuka and Sasha Banks wrestle before. The tag team match last week between Doudrop and Nikki A.S.H., I mean, it wasn't a bad match. I didn't see anything egregious that went down there. Maybe I overlooked something, but that is a head scratcher to me that they would have an issue being in the ring with one of these 4, which makes me think it's not an in-ring thing. Again, it could come down to creative. It could be something personal. I don't know. What do you read into that?
Yeah, I kind of had to halt some people because I know immediately people wanted to, it seemed like people were trying to defend Becky and Asuka and trying to like totally bypass the fact that Sasha and Naomi were in the ring with Doudrop and Nikki A.S.H. last week. Don't
Yeah.
try to just say that, oh, it has to be either Doudrop or Nikki. No, it could be any of these 4. It could be any 2 of these 4 involved, because it didn't say they felt like the 2 of their opponents in this matchup were unsafe. They said they didn't feel comfortable. That means that you don't feel comfortable working with them. So there's either a broken trust there, miscommunication, a lack of communication. There can be any number of things. So that was a part that really stood out to me as well, because I was just like, okay, it's one thing if you don't feel, comfortable with the creative, you
Yeah.
don't feel comfortable with the booking, you don't feel comfortable with the way Vince spoke to Sasha, you don't feel comfortable with John Laurinaitis, Bruce Pritchard, any of these things. But this seems like a bigger situation, and that's why I said, like, this all of this information that was given to us was big, but the WWE coming out with a statement felt like that was like the biggest stamp that this is might be even bigger story than it is right now while we're talking about it. That this is something that over the next week we're going to learn more and more information about this, and this is a culmination of maybe a few days, maybe a few weeks, maybe a couple of different decisions that they have made, because WWE doesn't put out information like this. But in my opinion, like I said, the whole Corey Greaves coming out on commentary and saying they walked out unprofessionally, that's them controlling their narrative.
Yep.
This statement, though, feels like WWE threw Sasha Banks and Naomi under a goddamn bus and went over them and then went back and went over them again, because they put in information that they didn't need to. They really
No,
didn't
they
need
really
to.
didn't.
They really didn't need to say all of this. They could have said that it was a miscommunication between the 2 sides. Like, I I went hard and I was like critical of AEW for lack of communication with the whole Hikaru Shida being out of the Owen Hart Foundation tournament. But I made this comment in the chat on Drew Hill Heat, and I'll make it here. I think Sasha Banks and Naomi rather have them said that they were injured, even if they're not. I think they would rather them say that than
Yeah.
put out a statement saying what their interpretation of what happened in this situation, because I feel like when we hear the other side, whether it's Sasha Banks, getting out of her contract, and she just had one of the biggest actors and biggest comedians in the world, Kevin Hart, say that she's in for big things, not just in WWE but in Hollywood. Naomi, she has a smile and some charisma that could translate to stuff outside of WWE. These women, I think, will be successful no matter where they are, whether it's WWE, whether it's another wrestling promotion, or whether it's outside of wrestling completely. They honestly, if they felt the need to give the women's tag team titles to John Laurinaitis and walk out, I think they have a feeling that they are going to be successful regardless. So this just
Yeah.
feels like WWE threw them under the bus, in my opinion.
Yeah, this is WWE, in my opinion, trying to get the court of public opinion on their side, right? Like this is WWE trying to spin things and get the public behind WWE. But look, people who are paying attention to these reports, it ain't your casual audience, right? Like it's we know, okay, we know. Like the other side's going to come, and I'm going to reserve judgment, right, until I get both sides, hear all the facts and everything like that. Again, I'm not taking sides here. I'm not taking anybody's side because I don't have all the information. So I'm not one to try to jump to conclusions on anything. What I will say is, but based off of what everything that I've seen here, the fact that they were willing to walk in and lay their tag team titles down on the desk and walk out and accept whatever fate it was, to me, shows a confidence from them and their standing with the company. They know exactly who they are and their positioning inside WWE to know that they could probably get away with doing that. Sasha Banks, as you alluded to, whether people want to admit it or not, is the most mainstream crossover star they have. Period. End of story. Done. Bigger than Roman Reigns, bigger than Becky Lynch, bigger than Brock Lesnar, bigger than any of them. Sasha Banks is everywhere. She's in fucking Star Wars, which is unbelievable that WWE did not promote that nearly as much as they should have or could have. All right. She is in the Star Wars Lucas era saga. She is Hollywood bound. They would be lucky to have her full time for another 2 years. So for Sasha Banks to walk in there and be confident enough in her position and feel strongly enough for her to go, yeah, this is the hill I want to die on. Because either y'all are going to be pimp slapped by me so damn hard and go, okay, we were wrong, or you're going to do something stupid and you're going to let Sasha Banks walk, and I'm going to be damn successful on whatever I want. I can do whatever Hollywood project I want to do. I can go do Mandalorian season 3. I could go do whatever the hell I want. I could walk into AEW in 90 days and be the biggest damn star in that entire company. No disrespect meant to Thunder Rosa or Dr. Britt Baker, DMD, who I'm a huge fan of both of them. Same for Naomi. She's been with the company 15 years. Something like that. Crazy. She was a funkadactyl, for crying out loud. All right. She knows her position. She's part of the bloodline. She is part of the royal effing family. She knows her damn position. Looks like Jimmy Uso's not going to get any blowback by this, by the way. He was on the show. He did compete. So, everything is okay there, we would assume. He is also still a part of one of the biggest storylines going in WWE.
I mean, Jimmy Uso's done enough himself, and it
Fair.
hasn't blown back on him. So I don't think
Fair.
what his significant other does will blow back on him. To be fair, there. Yeah, like I said, like I'm not taking any sides. I'm just giving my perception of things that are going on here. Like I said, all we've heard is from one side. There are always three sides to every story. There's WWE in this situation, it's WWE side. Actually, it's four sides to the story. It's WWE side, it's Sasha Banks side, it's Naomi side, and then there's the truth. And the truth is somewhere in between all those areas. But this is one of the wildest stories that has happened in WWE. And that's saying a lot in a year that Cody Rhodes came back to WWE. That I'm saying this, that I'm saying that this whole situation, especially with WWE releasing a statement like this, doesn't
Yeah.
happen every day, ladies and gentlemen, with WWE exposing what happens backstage, them having commentators mention it on air. I don't know if this was the right decision on WWE's
I
part.
don't think it was. I
Like,
don't think it was. And this is the thing. Going back to what I just said, Sasha Banks knows who she is and what she brings to the table. This statement to me tells me that WWE still doesn't know what they have in Sasha Banks. They still don't know. Either that or for some reason they don't care. And this to me feels like a stalemate that ain't going to be resolved by Friday. That's for damn sure.
and I hate to bring this up, but it has to be said, and I think I'm the right person to say it on the show. Would this have happened? And I just brought it up with Jimmy Uso. He had his whole situation, and there was no blowback. There's been other situations, like I said, Stone Cold Steve Austin, where they said he took his ball and went home. Would this be happening if this was per se a Seth Rollins doing this, or I'm just saying that it's not a good look that WWE has gone about this situation, and the two people they are going about this situation with are two African American women.
Yeah.
I hate to bring race into this situation, but I, as an African American fan of this, of watching this, business, regardless of promotion, I watch this business, I cover it. I have to bring this stuff up that there is a kind of a racial undertone to it. It's not going to be brought up too much, and people are like, "Oh, don't bring up race to it." You have to ask the question: would WWE treat one of their white male superstars in the way they are treating Sasha Banks and Naomi in this situation? That's all I'm gonna do is just put the question out there, and I'll let anyone give their own perception or their own opinion on it.
Yeah, it's a valid question to ask. And I would throw it out there, if this was oh man, I mean, yeah, it's a difficult thing to respond to, obviously. I mean, I think the same thing it could be said if it was, you know, I'm trying to think of an equivalent here. I mean, this kind of goes to the same thing of like, so the second somebody's released, all of a sudden they're difficult to work with, right? They're difficult to work with, and this, that, and the other. Anybody who usually fights for their creative freedom, it's somebody who's difficult to work with. And now I will say that was the line that was fed to us about Keith Lee. Well, that was also the same line that was fed about Bray Wyatt and some of these other guys. So it's hard to say that without having a direct comparison. And right now, I don't know if we have a direct, but it's a totally fair question to ask.
Because even with those situations, Keith Lee gets released, they don't mention him ever again. Bray Wyatt gets released, they don't mention him. They give Alexa Bliss his
Pat
gimmick.
McAfee
They
did
don't.
one time.
Yeah, he mentioned it because someone was cosplaying as it, but they don't mention it the way they went about this.
Yeah.
The unprofessionally walking out, the statement. It does not leave a good taste in my mouth. Like I said, I have watched WWE for nearly all of my life. I'm going on 34 years old this week. It does not leave a good taste in my mouth at this whole situation because it's two African American women in this, and I have to ask the question of would they be doing this if it wasn't two African American women?
And here's the thing, right? Because this is not the first time that Sasha Banks has disappeared, right? This would be the third situation by my recollection. The first time it was for several months, and she said she needed a break. She was burnt out. She had asked for her release. So let's not act like it's been all sunshine and roses with Vince McMahon and Sasha Banks, even though that they have had a good working relationship. And Sasha will go out on Twitter and say, I love Vince McMahon and this, that, and the other thing. So this kind of goes against my argument of WWE not knowing what they have in Sasha Banks. Maybe they know enough to realize that they want to keep her around, because I think if this was anybody else, they would have been let go tomorrow without a statement. And ultimately, that may be what ends up happening. They may have to come to terms on a release of Sasha Banks, Naomi, or both. I hope it doesn't come to that. I would like to see Sasha Banks and Naomi back on my TV screen this Friday. I don't think that's going to happen, but we still don't know why Sasha Banks missed out on SummerSlam last year. Personal matter, none of our business, but that did happen. So then now this is the third time Sasha Banks has left. Has it always been creative butting heads? She's not afraid to stand up for what she believes in, and that is to be admired. And she also knows her position in the locker room, that she knows the hill that she can die on and what she wants to fight for. So for a certain angle, to a certain extent, I respect all of that. But again, I can't pick and choose and say who's in the right and who's in the wrong because we don't have all the information yet. Again, it is a weird story. There's a lot of questions. There's a lot to unpack. What we do know for sure is Sasha Banks and Naomi laid their belts down. They walked out last night. They had to change the main event. It went to Becky and Asuka one-on-one. Got to feel a little bad for Nikki A.S.H. and Doudrop as they were completely dropped from the show, period, last night. No explanation, no nothing. Again, last-minute changes. They were probably like, let's just go with these two. It makes the most sense and move on. Asuka did defeat Becky Lynch last night with the mist. It was a good main event with a fun finish, a solid end to a weird-ass night. So now we have 2 additional matches for Hell in a Cell. We have Asuka against Bianca Belair for the Raw Women's Championship. And then, yeah, the only other thing that I can really remember other than Kevin Owens is great at commentary is Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins 3 made official for In Hell in a Cell. Cody Rhodes cut a hell of a promo. I mean, those are really the only 2 noteworthy things that actually happened on the show last night.
Yeah, you got more off the show than I did. I really enjoyed Cody Rhodes' promo. I enjoyed the match between Asuka and Becky Lynch. I enjoyed the match between Riddle and Jimmy Uso. There was good wrestling on the show, but yeah, the headlines and what people are going to be talking about, any other Raw review you see today, yeah, it will have majority talking about Sasha Banks and Naomi walking out. And probably by the time you hear other Raw reviews throughout the day, there will be more information, pivy to them that they can discuss. We are just discussing what we can hear now, and man, it just a whirlwind night.
Again, and I go back to this. Maybe not, because again, based off of what we've seen with Sasha Banks, this may have been bubbling up for a while here with her unfollowing WWE and Vince McMahon and all of this stuff and creative direction. So maybe some of this has been bubbling up for a little bit here. But again, I go back to, man, why the hell didn't you just book Carmella and Queen Zelina in this damn match and call it a freaking day, man, a freaking day? WWE, they tend to create their own problems. And you could trace this back. This is another ripple effect of things that we have been talking about for weeks now. We know it. The fans see it. The superstars experience it. Then you end up getting something like this, where you have 2 of your top female stars, your most talented ones, especially on the SmackDown brand. Oh, boy. You want to talk about the SmackDown women's division without Sasha Banks and Naomi in it? Whew. Who you got? Ronda Rousey, Raquel, and who? That's some slim pickings, man. We will find out. Hopefully more today. I'm sure more tomorrow. I'm sure more on Thursday. I'm hoping we see Sasha and Naomi on Friday, but I'm not going to hold my breath. Again, this has been a weird episode, to say the least. We appreciate you guys diving in on all of this. Make sure to leave your comments here on the page. We'll comb through them. You can hit us up on Twitter with your thoughts as well, at Rick Ucchino, at TrueHeelSP3. I guess Jeremy and I'll talk about NXT tomorrow. Maybe, maybe not. We'll be back 7 a.m. Me and SP3 will be back Thursday, talk about Dynamite and probably more of this. Bleav in Pro Wrestling Podcast, brought to you by Bet Online. Enjoy your Tuesday, everybody. Holy shit.